Hello and welcome to the Drucker TV Book Corner, where we hear from authors shaping management thinking today. My name is Jyoti Guptara, and I'm the author of Business Storytelling from Hype to Hack. In the past, there were proven, well-worn paths to success, ladders we could climb. But young people today are predicted to hold as many as 20 jobs. Actually, that's on average, 20 jobs in 7 different careers. Does that make a lot of traditional advice for aspiring leaders irrelevant, if not downright harmful? Who better to help us navigate these stormy seas than legendary leadership coach Marshall Goldsmith and Asheesh Advani, President and CEO of Junior Achievement Worldwide. Marshall joining us live from Nashville, and Asheesh Advani with us for the second time at the Global Peter Drucker Forum. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's really a pleasure to be here.
I'm so happy to be here.
And Marshall's here with me. This is perfect. We're going to try to coordinate across the Atlantic.
Your new book.
Can you see me and hear me okay?
We can see you and hear you, Marshall, and we're very happy to be speaking with you. We have a first at the Drucker Forum TV Book Corner. We've never done this before. I've done virtual interviews with authors, and we've had live interviews with the author in the studio, but this is a first. And that's why I want to take the opportunity and ask both of you to talk about the other person. Your book is about handling unpredictability, so I'm going to ask both of you to talk about your co-author. I know how intimate it is to co-author a book. So, Marshall, let me start by mentioning that you, in incredible generosity, have pioneered something called knowledge philanthropy. And you have chosen, a few times now, 100 people that you have called together into a community, 100 coaches. But of course, there were many more than 100. I think you had something like 16,000 applicants who wanted to learn from the one and only Marshall Goldsmith. So here's my first question for you, Marshall. Asheesh Advani is a brilliant guy, and yet, how do you pick Asheesh out of 16,000 applicants?
Well, to me, I'm very honored to even know Asheesh. He is a person who works not only out of his head, but out of his heart. He's a good combination of, one, being incredibly brilliant, but two, which to me is more important, I'm around a lot of smart people, he's actually trying to make the world a better place. I love what he's doing in junior achievement. He's making a global impact, but most of all, he's a good guy and we have fun together.
Great answer. Thank you, Marshall. And Asheesh, Marshall has been teaching generations of executives. Are there any particular lessons that you've learned personally from Marshall?
How long do we have? I could spend the entire time just talking about what I've learned from Marshall. But let me just say that this idea of knowledge philanthropy is so powerful. And all Marshall asked in return from all of us that he selected to be part of this community is that we choose to give back at later stages of our careers and lives. And that's such a nice, simple, paid-forward ask. And at least the way we actually got to know each other is a bit of a story. We both were introduced to each other, and we didn't really know each other's backgrounds. And rather than brag about the things we'd done, we both talked about what we wanted to do. And it's a great lesson, particularly for some of your listeners. Rather than talk about how smart you are, talk about what you want to do and where you're going. It brings so much more energy to a conversation.
You mentioned your backgrounds. Not many people know this because neither of you talk about this a lot, but both of you were trained originally as economists. So one could say that you have modeled having a non-traditional career path, which is what your book is all about. Why today are things so different for young people going forwards? Does this have to do with economic shifts? Can you speak to that a little?
Well, there's so many shifts in the world right now that are leading to young people who are graduating to have multiple careers and multiple jobs. You mentioned, on average, somebody graduating from university is going to have at least 20 different jobs and at least 7 different careers. Nobody really knows the exact number, but we know it's going to be a lot. And most books about achievement are written with long-term goal setting in mind. You write down your goal, you visualize it, and the universe helps make it happen. But in the world of today and tomorrow, where we're going to have that much change, the idea of having one long-term goal may not be the best advice for young people. You need to have multiple goals, be able to change and pivot, and really lean into the journey and the process of achievement. So the idea of achievement even being defined as goal attainment is outdated. One thing I've learned from Marshall is there's so many habits that we need to form, ideally early in our life when it's easier to change, as opposed to later in our life where learning new habits is harder. And if we can help young people truly learn the right habits, the process of achievement, their ability to gain happiness in the journey of goal attainment is higher.
So a lot is changing. Some things will never change, which is why I believe the subtitle of your book is A New Approach for Timeless Lessons for Aspiring Leaders. Marshall, I was having a conversation just the other week with the head of learning and development for a very large organization, and I mentioned the Drucker Forum. This gentleman said, oh yes, Peter Drucker was a very wise guy for his time. Now, I had the privilege of being with you and the 100 National Future Leaders for 3 days, and you must have quoted Peter Drucker probably 50 times or so, and you mentioned in your LinkedIn post advertising this slot that Peter Drucker was a mentor to you. Marshall, what would you say to someone like the gentleman I was speaking with? Which of Drucker's principles are outdated and which will remain timeless?
Well, I don't know which ones are outdated, but a lot of them certainly remain timeless. Let me give you one that I think is very important for young people to understand. And as you know, we did a little research with the people that came to your group of young leaders, and it's surprising how few of them get this because it's a very easy point to understand, but it's hard to execute. First, our mission in life is to make a positive difference, not to prove we're smart and not to prove we're right. So few of us ever get that point, especially engineers, scientists. You're brought up in a world of proving you're smart and right. Peter Drucker said, that's useless. Who cares if you're smart or right? We're not here on earth to prove we're smart or right. We're here to make a positive difference. Second, another point very few of us get, every decision in life is made by the person who has the power to make the decision. Make peace with that. Not the smartest person, the best person, most wonderful person. Whoever has the power to make the decision is going to make the decision. And if I need to influence you to make a positive difference in the world, and you have the power to make the decision, there's one word to describe you, it's called customer. One word to describe me, it's called salesperson. Customers don't have to buy. Salespeople have to sell. And I find even with MBAs from top schools, and you met many, that group you were in, 50 people were from MBAs from top schools. Many of those people don't get these points even today. I have to go over this over and over. They sit there, oh, it's not fair, right, it's not logical. Who cares? That's not what you're here for. You're here to make a positive difference. Are you doing any good or are you just whining?
So let's talk about having some vision for making positive impact long term. And yet, as we've been hearing, the path to achievement is non-linear now. How do you, in your book, prepare people for the unpredictable?
Well, as I said, it's about habits and process. So one thing I've learned from Marshall is you need to embrace your inexperience and cluelessness. So when you are setting goals, you need to assume that some of them are not going to go your way. And as you heard Marshall say, you need to realize that you may not be the decision maker. So if you can align your goals to the organizational goals, you're more likely to achieve success. Now, this is very difficult for young people to hear because we're taught that you need to have life purpose. Sometimes we're taught we're supposed to have life purpose so early. But one thing I've learned from Aisha Bursell, who's the illustrator of the book, and somebody who I know Marshall knows very well as well, is when you're younger, in early career, your purpose might be given to you by your organization, by your peers, by your family, by your boss. At some point in time in your life, you may actually develop a purpose that is self-made, driven by you. But that may not happen in your early career. And to be at one with that, I think, is essential advice. I know Marshall definitely has had his own experiences with that over the course of his career and the people he meets.
I completely agree with you. As we go through life, it also evolves too. One of the things that I think is very important is not to get into that's just the way I am mindset. I'm a Buddhist as well. And although Peter Drucker wouldn't say he was a Buddhist, his work was actually quite Buddhist in terms of his philosophy, very consistent with Buddhist philosophy. Acceptance of what is was a very big thing. And in terms of purpose, our purpose in life changes. Our purpose in life changes as we grow older. And I think sometimes we get lost in the search for the quote, real me. as opposed to we're wasting time trying to find the real me as opposed to creating the me that could exist.
Marshall and Asheesh, you're giving us a lot of great advice now, and there's, of course, your book. Some people will already remember, based on earlier Drucker Forum conversations that we've had with Marshall Goldsmith, that now anybody has access, at least to a virtual version of Marshall through his AI large language model clone, Marshall Bot. The question is, Asheesh and Marshall, when is it enough for people to read your book or to go to, I think it's marshallgoldsmith.ai, and when do we need a real human being as a mentor or a peer?
Marshall, you got to answer this one first.
My work has been profoundly influenced by Peter Drucker. His teachings on management and making a positive difference have shaped my approach to executive coaching. He taught me that our mission in life should be to make a positive difference, not to prove how smart or right we are. This has guided me to focus on health.
That sounds familiar.
Uh-oh, now I'm confused. Are we talking to the Marshall bot or the real Marshall? This is the new reality. This is the new reality.
Look, everything that I know, I put 3 million words into this. 3 million words. I put a couple hundred hours into this. So for me, this is a legacy project. And by the way, it's all free. Please go to marshallgoldsmith.ai. I'm giving away everything I know. It's part of the knowledge philanthropy idea. And it's been so fascinating for me to do this. So fascinating. And, you know, you talk about age differences. It's also kind of cool for a 75-year-old. You know, people say, do you know anything about AI, old man? I go, well, you know, I really don't know much. Let's ask my little friend.
You're cutting edge, Marshall. But when should people speak to Asheesh or even someone at work?
Look, the reality is, who's going to talk to me anyway in person? Either A, you're rich, or B, you're doing good deeds, or C, like Asheesh, I'm your honorary father. So unless you're one of those three people, you're going to talk to me anyway. Let's get real here. People say, is this as good as talking to you? Well, you're not going to talk to me anyway. Come on, let's get a life. This is something that's free, and it's going to be available in multiple languages. It's already available in 7 languages now. It's going to be available in multiple languages. So it's not a matter of, do I talk to this thing or I talk to you? You're not going to talk to me anyway. The thing is, this is everything I know, and it's available free, and it's available instantaneously around the world in multiple languages.
You mentioned
And by the way,
age difference, Marshall. So in the book, you talk about the importance of making friends or developing relationships with people both older and younger than yourself. Why is that?
Well, how did I get here? It's because we have a friendship. And people can't tell, but this man is younger than I am. And I've got to tell you, my relationship with Marshall is, I've learned so much from him, even the idea of MarshallBot. I now introduce MarshallBot to the young people who I meet through Junior Achievement. And so there's a chance to bridge generations and learn from each other. If you're going to have 20 jobs and 7 careers, you're going to have to network with people who are role models and mentors who are a few years older than you. And that's advice that young people don't get when they're at university. They're spending all their time with their peers who are the same age. So in my view, it's one of the core pieces of advice that we give young people.
Is there any way that...
Well, and also, just a second, and also people younger than you. I mean, I learned so much from that Future Leaders program at Nashville, number one. I'm sure, the oldest person there. I learned a lot from you guys. Number two, I didn't invent this computer bot by myself. I don't think too many 75-year-olds came up with this idea. So, you know, you need to work not just with people older than you need to work with people younger than you.
Is there any way that managers can help facilitate this sort of relationship building intentionally?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we've heard all about both reverse mentoring programs and mentoring programs. I think the one thing people forget is that mentoring truly is a two-way street. So it's not just trying to learn from somebody and trying to help encourage them to support your career, but it's also finding ways that you can support their career and their knowledge acquisition. I know in all the stories we tell in the book, it's all about that two-way street, which then creates a longer-term relationship with your mentor.
Your book is full of wonderful stories, and yet you talk about how you weren't always a natural communicator. What advice do you have for people? A, why is it so important to share your personal story? And then for managers who may be a little more analytical, left-brained, what advice or encouragement do you have for them to start trying to tell their story?
Well, when I was younger, I had a speech impediment, so it made me very reticent to do public speaking. And it was because of all the speech therapy I had that I started to become more confident about public speaking and storytelling. Marshall actually really encouraged me to write this book with my own personal stories. I was very reticent. And for those engineers and scientists listening, I get you. It feels like you're putting your ego forward when you really want to put your lessons forward. But let me tell you that what I learned from Marshall has made the book much more readable and enjoyable because it actually has real stories from his life and my life and the life of a lot of young people. So I really credit Marshall for really pushing me, frankly, to get out of my comfort zone. Weirdly, I think I put my ego first the wrong way by not wanting to share the stories, and he taught me about that.
That's an interesting take on humility, or even false humility, maybe. Marshall, public speaking obviously is a timeless skill for future leaders, for modern achievement as well. I think going forward in the era of generative AI, that's not going anywhere. What other ingredients are there for modern achievement?
Well, I think public speaking, positive, simple, focused, and fast. And let's talk about how the world has changed. Positive, simple, and focused, I learned from Peter Drucker. Fast is becoming more and more important. I'm not making a value judgment, good or bad. The reality is people's attention spans are going like that. And really, if you're going to communicate today, you need to communicate very positive, simple, focused, and fast message, not 27 messages. Don't get lost in details. Don't start rambling around. You've kind of got to get to the punchline or you're going to lose the audience. And this is not becoming less true. This is far more true. Now, I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. It's just reality. The reality is people's attention for long, detailed lectures is plummeting. And so you have got to get to the punchline. You're an expert on storytelling too. As Asheesh said, and as you have said, you've got to make it interesting. And if you're just sitting there babbling out details, you're going to lose the audience.
And I like how in your book you talk about balancing complexity and simplicity, or how to frame that. Shifting gears, Junior Achievement has been nominated for the third time in a row for the Nobel Peace Prize. And you are one of the largest NGOs in the world for youth, and also in terms of working with volunteers. I believe you have over 400,000 volunteers, which reminds me of a Peter Drucker principle that going forward, corporations that employ people are actually going to have to start treating them more like volunteers. So Asheesh, what can we learn from the way that you and Junior Achievement handle and motivate volunteers that maybe corporate leaders can model?
Well, I will say that volunteering is one of the most fulfilling things you can do. And one of the things that I've learned from interacting with corporate executives and business people, they actually genuinely want to share their story with young people. But they may not fully appreciate how impactful that is. I think one reason we've received these nominations is you can't have peace in the world without prosperity for everyone. And you can't have prosperity in communities without having young people really feel that they can create a job for themselves, a job for others, create livelihoods for their families. And that only comes when young people identify with a role model who's done it before. So how do we connect young people all over the world in communities with business role models who went to their school, who have the same background as them, and they can say, oh, if they did it, so can I. So that's what our organization does at scale. And role models like Marshall, who can share their story using AI, where he can't necessarily travel around to people in all parts of the world. So we're starting to use technology to actually connect role models to young people. So the advice I would give for many of your listeners and all the corporate partners of this wonderful forum is really lean into the opportunity to give of your time, just like I think Peter Drucker said. This idea of not just thinking about it as giving back, but actually thinking that it as paying it forward is, in my mind, one of the most empowering principles.
Thank you. Your work at JA makes me hopeful. Marshall, we just have another 20 seconds left. Why are you hopeful about the next generation?
Oh, I'm very hopeful about the next generation. You are the next generation as far as I can say. You were with a lot of the next generation in Nashville. I think very positive, motivated, enthusiastic people. The only caution I give the next generation is don't be too hard on yourself. Don't be too hard on yourself. Enjoy the process of life. And get so driven to achievement, you forget to enjoy yourself. But I
Wonderful.
am very hopeful about the next generation.
Thank you so much, Marshall. Encouraging as always. It's been a real pleasure and honor having you from Nashville, Marshall and Asheesh. To our viewers, please pick up a copy of Modern Achievement, a new approach to timeless lessons for aspiring leaders. And the only reason we didn't have it here to show is because the book has already sold out here at the Drucker Forum.
Thanks, Marshall.
Next up, we're going to be hearing from Eduardo Brown, our conference chair, in conversation with none other than a storytelling pioneer, Steve Denning.